Hi, welcome to how to set up a lab for RHCSA and RHCE. We'll take the following steps to set the lab up. First thing we'll do is create a base VMware image. From that image, we'll create 3 virtual machines. We'll configure one of the virtual machine as an IPA server, the second virtual machine as server 1, and finally the third virtual machine as server 2. I will be using the following network details for each of the servers. Now I'm going to be using these particular network details because it's the subnet that I'm on, and I will be needing network access from within the servers themselves. You will have to use your own network details. Right, let's get started. This is my lab. It's an old Dell PowerEdge 1950 server. It has half a terabyte of RAID 0 disk space. I have put Windows 2008 R2 on here. The server has 32 gigs of RAM and a quad-core Xeon processor. The virtualization software I'm using is VMware Workstation, but you can use any of the popular ones. Now I just want to show you the virtual network details. Now I'm going to be using 2 different virtual networks. A bridge virtual network for when I need internet access from within the virtual machines, and also a host-only virtual network for VMware VM to VM communication, and it's for things like teaming and even iSCSI setup. Right, the first thing I do is set up a folder in VMware Workstation to house all the virtual machines in. Let's call this RHCE. We will create a new virtual machine for the base image. Typical is fine. I opt to install the operating system later. It's Linux and CentOS 64-bit. Let's call this RHCE base image. 20 gig of disk space is plenty. Only thing I change is store virtual disk as a single file. Now we don't need all the hardware, so let's remove sound card. We certainly don't need a printer either. And I'm going to increase the memory to 2 GB. It makes it comfortable. And finish. We need to connect the ISO to the virtual CD drive. I've got CentOS 64-bit version. You can download CentOS from any of the download mirrors. And power on the virtual machine. We don't need to test the media, so straight onto the install. Now the install boot process takes about, I don't know, maybe 15 to 20 seconds. The whole install process is about 20 minutes or so. It doesn't take very long at all. Okay, nearly there, I think. Here we go. So select your keyboard layout, United Kingdom in my case. By default, you get the minimal install under software selection. I just changed that to server with GUI. That gives you pretty much all the packages that you need. The other thing I like to do is change the disk layout from automatic to custom. Okay, the first partition that we need to create is the boot partition. 200 megabytes for this is fine. Now that will allow you to store a couple of kernels, maybe 3. The second partition is the swap partition. I give it the same size as the total RAM in the system, 2 gigabytes in this case. And finally, we create a root partition. I give this 10 gigs. That still leaves us with about 7 gigs for creating additional partitions for testing purposes. I'm not going to bother to configure the network at this time, purely because it's just a base image. And that's it. The only other things that we need to do is set a root password, and I'm going to be using a very weak password, so I will have to click done twice. And a additional standard user. Again, a very, very weak password. So done twice. Now this install will take a few minutes, so let's come back when it's done. Great, the install's finished. Let's reboot. The whole boot process takes about 15 to 20 seconds. By default, grub bootloader doesn't show you anything. It's all happening in the background. But we can change that by modifying the grub config file, and we will do that once we've logged in for the first time. Okay, here we go. We'll log in as the standard user. Actually, we are going to need internet access from inside this VM because we need to do a yum update to download all the latest patches and updates. So I'm going to just change the network settings. I'm going to put it on our bridge network, which will give us internet access. Also, the first time you log in, you get this startup wizard. You just need to set the language settings and your keyboard setting. So here we go. Yep, that's fine for me. Let's start a bash shell. Right click and select open in terminal. To do anything useful, we will switch to root user. First thing I want to do is check the network. NM2 is the text user interface. It's a bit of a GUI. I'm not going to configure anything here because I have DHCP running on my network, and I just want internet access. When we configure the IPA server, the server 1 and the server 2, we'll configure everything properly. Just for now, I need internet access. Let's see if we have an IP address. No, we don't. Let's check if the device status. Okay, so it's not connected. So let's connect it up. nmcli device connect, and then the name of the device, which is ENO, some random numbers. Next thing we need to do is bring the connection down and then up again. So down first and then up. Let's see if we have an IP address. Yes, we do, so that's great. The next thing we want to do, well, let's check if we have internet first. Yes, great. Next thing we want to do is change the grab options so that we can see all the messages as the server is booting. What we need to do is get rid of RHGB and quiet. This just ensures that the messages are not in the background and you can see what's going on. I prefer that anyway. I mean, it's not a requirement. You do have to remake the config file. To do that, you need to run grab make config. I think you have to specify the output file. Yes, you do. So that's option O. And the output file is in boot grab2 and is grub.cfg. There you go. The other thing we want to do is we want to boot into just the text user interface. We don't need the GUI. To do that, you need to run systemctl and set the default runtime level, which is multi-user.target. Right, let's reboot to see all that worked. Okay, here we go. We are seeing our startup messages, so that's good. This is useful if you ever have any boot up issues. Okay, let's log in, and it's also given us the text user interface, not the graphical. So we log in as root. If let's see, our internet is still up. I guess not. I don't think I've set the network connection to start at boot time. But like I said, this is just a base image, so it's not that important. We'll configure the networking properly for the actual servers. Let's just bring the connection down and then back up again. Boot. Okay, let's just check the internet. Great. I'm just going to do a yum update. Using the option Y means it won't prompt me for anything. Now this will take a while from looking at the number of packages that is thinks it needs to update. Oh wow. Okay, so let's leave this running. It would probably take a few minutes and we'll come back once it's finished. Great, it's finished. Let's take a snapshot so that we can use it as the base image. Actually, let's reboot the server first. Make sure the updates didn't break anything. There we go. The additional kernels is installed. Okay, great. Let's log in and shut it down so that we can take a snapshot and use that snapshot as the base for our additional servers. So halt. Okay, we have to manually power off. So right click on the virtual machine, power, and then power off. Okay, let's make a snapshot. We'll call this snapshot gold image. Okay, now we can start creating our virtual machine. So right click, manage, clone, and we will be specifying linked clone, which will save us a lot of space. Let's specify our snapshot and create a linked clone. Yep. We'll call this the IPA server. Finish. Let's create server 1. So same process again. Right click, manage, clone. Then select the snapshot and linked clone. And let's call this server 1. Finally, it's the same process again for server 2. So right click, snapshot, not snapshot, manage, clone, specify the snapshot. Yep. And we'll call this server 2. Finish. Okay, let's move all our virtual machines into the folder that we created earlier on. Just need to select them and drag them across. Just makes it a lot more organized. Okay, so let's power on our IPA server, which we can configure as an IPA server, funnily enough. Okay, let's boot into the server. Log in as root. Right, the first thing we want to do is set this set the host name for this server. So we're going to call it ipa.example.com. To set it, we will use hostname ctl. and I think it's set. Yeah, there we go. Set host name, set hyphen host name, ipa.example.com. Right, there's no DNS set up at the moment, so what we need to do is add the host record into the etc hosts file. So the IP of this server will be 10.10.10.146, and we will just set the host name as ipa.example.com and the short version as well. Save the changes. Okay, now let's set the IP address. First thing we want to do is check what connections are there. Okay, so there's a default connection. We will delete this and we'll recreate it as ETH0. So first thing is NMCLI connection delete and then the name of the connection. Let's check the connection is gone. So NMCLI connection show will show all the connections and we have none. So let's add one. NMCLI connection add, the type will be Ethernet, and then the connection name we'll call it ETH0, and the interface will be ENO some random number, which okay, so NMCLI connection we want to modify. If you do a tab, it will show you all the connections. So we have ETH0, there we go. So modify ETH0, and then we want to assign IP address. So IPv4.address 10.10.10.146, and we'll use a 24-bit subnet, and then IPv4 gateway. My gateway is 10.10.10.5, and the DNS will point to itself. We don't have any DNS set up yet, so we will have to do a temporary fix for that. 10.10.10.146. And then we just want to set the connection to be a static connection. So NMCLI connection modify again, ETH0, and IPv4.method will be manual. Okay, there you go. Now to activate this connection, you have to bring it down and then bring it back up. If it's already up, that is. So down first. And then up. Okay. So if we look at the resolve.conf file, we'll see that it's pointing to itself for the DNS. Now it gets this from the connection. So if you modify this, every time you restart, it will any addition you make here will disappear. But as we don't have any DNS configured on this server yet, let's temporarily add Google's DNS. So name server 8.8.8.8. Okay, what's going on here? Okay, I have a typo. Let's correct that quickly. I'll get it right in a minute. There we go. Save the changes. Okay. Let's just test that we have internet. Okay, great. So we need to install the packages for the IPA server. So yum install IPA server, and then there's a couple of dependency packages as well. Bind, because we want the DNS to be on here, and then NDS-LDAP. Okay. Yes. Great, the packages are installed, so now we need to run the IPA server install program. So that is IPA-server-install. Yes, we do want to integrate bind. Right, so it's telling us there is a dependency package missing, so let's quickly install that. Yum install bind hyphen dindb hyphen ldap, and that will install the package that's missing. Yes to that. Okay, let's try the install again. So IPA hyphen server hyphen install. Yes, we do want to integrate bind. Just say yes to that. I know for a fact we don't have a bind config. Yeah, it's picked up the host name. That's fine. Yep. Now you need a password for the directory manager and a password for the IPA admin user. Okay. Yes, we do. Let's point it to Google's DNS 8.8.8.8. What's going on? 8.8.8.8. Say yes to this. Okay, now this does take a while, so we'll wait for this to install, and then let's come back. Okay, it's finished. So the first thing we want to do is open up these ports that is saying it needs. So we need to run firewall-cmd permanent, so it's persistent after a reboot, add-service, and then we'll do each one in turn. So first one is HTTP, next one is HTTPS, next one is LDAP, LDAP, and then LDAP-S. Kerberos we also need. And finally, DNS. To activate these rules, we need to just reload the firewall config. So that's just firewall-cmd --reload. And we can check by doing firewall-cmd --list all. And there we go, as all our services are added in. Right, so part of the installation process creates two certificates, CA-agent P12 and CA cert P12. CA cert P12 is very, very important for when we're joining other servers to this Kerberos domain. You will need that certificate. So let's run kinit admin and to pick up some Kerberos credentials. Now if we run IPA user -find and then admin, that will show us if the admin user is indeed on the IPA server. There we go. Now let's add a user. Let's call it IPA user 1. So first name IPA, second name user 1. Login is user 1. And then we need to set a password, so that's just IPA passwd, and then the name of the user, which is user 1, and set a password. If we run IPA find user 1, in fact it's not find user, it's user find. So IPA user -find user 1 should show us the user. There we go. The next thing we want to do is add the host records for our two servers on here. So that's IPA host add. We'll have to use the force option. IPA address. First server is 10.10.10.147. And our host name is server1.example.com. Okay, we'll do the same for the second server, which is 10.10.10.148, and server2.example.com. Okay, that's all we need to do on the IPA server. So let's configure server 1 now. Let's power server 1 on. So right click the VM, power, and then power on. Just wait for it to boot up. Login as root. First thing we want to do is set the host name. So that's hostname ctl set hyphen host name. This will be server1 dot example dot com. Let's have a look at our network connection. An MCLI connection show. We will delete this one. So an MCLI connection delete ENO. Right, let's create a connection and we'll call it ETH0. Set MCLI connection add. Type is Ethernet. Connection name is ETH0. And we'll use the interface ENO random number. Let's assign our IP address. An MCLI connection modify ETH0. IPv4 dot addresses. Our this server is 10.10.10.147/24. Our gateway is still the same, so 10.10.10.5, and we will point to the IPA server for our DNS, which is 10.10.10.146. I had 2 dots. Let's correct that quickly. And then finally, we just need to set our connection method to manual. So an MCLI connection modify ETH0 IPv4.method manual. We need to activate the connection, so first bring it down and then bring it up. Great, let's test our connectivity. Gateway is fine. Let's test our DNS resolution. Yep, great. So next thing we need to do is install the required packages so that we can join the Kerberos domain. So yum install NSS PAM LDAP D PAM KRB5. Yes. Right, now we'll use alt config 2e to join it to the Kerberos domain. So specify LDAP and also specify Kerberos, and then next. And yes, we will use TLS, and our LDAP server is ipa.example.com, and our base DN is example.com, which is already picked up. Example, too many, example.com. And the realm is example.com in caps lock, and we'll use DNS to resolve host to realms and DNS to locate KDCs as well. Okay, that. Right, it's telling us we need to copy the certificate to etc open LDAP CA certs. So let's do that quickly. So we'll change directory to etc open LDAP dot slash CA certs, and we'll use SCP to copy the certificate from the IPA server. So SCP IPA :/root /CA cert .p12 to the current directory. Accept the key, yes, the root password, and we're done. There is one other thing we need to do, because this is not a this is a self-signed certificate in effect. So if we open up the nslcd.conf, there is a directive that says to ignore certificate errors. So tls-rxcert never. Just uncomment that and save the file. We do need to restart the NSLCD service. So the systemctl restart NSLCD LCD, not double D. Now we can test our Kerberos. So su user1, which is our Kerberos user, and there you go. We are now part of the Kerberos domain. Let's do the same for server 2. So power on server 2. Let's log in as root. Let's check our network settings. So NMCLI connection show. We'll delete this one and we'll recreate it as ETH0. So NMCLI connection delete ENO tab to autocomplete. NMCLI connection add, type is Ethernet, name is ETH0, and the device we'll use is ENO 1677736. Let's assign our IP and DNS. So NMCLI connection modify ETH0 IPv4 address is this one will be 10.10.10.148/24. Gateway is still the same, 10.10.10.5, and we will point to the IPA server again for the DNS, 10.10.10.146. Let's set the connection to manual. IPv4.method. Let's test our network connectivity. So ping IPA. I forgot. We need to drop the connection first and bring it back up to activate the new settings. So NMCLI connection down, ETH0. NMCLI connection up, ETH0. Great. Let's test again. Ping IPA. Great. Excellent. Let's ping server 2 as well. So we've pinged all the servers by name, and that's fine. So we haven't set the host name yet, so let's do that quickly. Hostname CTL, set hostname. This will be server2.example.com. Let's install the required packages to join the Kerberos domain. Yum install NSS pam ldap d and pam underscore krb5. Let's use the Y switch so it doesn't prompt us. Auth config 2e again. Select LDAP and Kerberos. This is our IPA server, so ipa.example.com. And our realm is example.com. Tick both options and OK. Just reminding us about the certificate, which we'll copy straight away. Okay, so SCP the cert.p12 from the IPA server. Let's navigate to the correct directory. etc open LDAP ca certs scp ipa:/root/ca cert.p12 to the current directory. Don't forget the nslcd.conf file. We'll just uncomment the tls_exert never and just save the config. Restart the nslcd service, the systemctl restart nslcd service. And let's test by switching to LDAP user 1. Great. So this is also now part of the Kerberos domain. So we shut this down. We're a non-privileged user, so exit out of user 1. Now halt this server. Same with server 1. Let's power this off first. Power off. Server 1 we will hold and power off as well. Let's exit out of non-privileged user, EXIT that is. I'll get it right in a minute. There we go. Power it off. Just before we take the snapshot of this configured server, let's add 2 additional network cards to each server, because you will need these for some of the tasks on the objective lists, like the teaming. Let's remove the ISO from being connected to the CD. We'll add a couple of network cards, and we'll use our host-only network, which was VMnet 4. Finish. Another one, same network. Let's do the same for server 2. Edit settings. Disconnect the ISO first. Add the network adapter. Host only network. Same again. Okay, now we can take a snapshot of each of the servers. Give it a name, any name is fine. So I'm gonna call this server1 post Kerberos. Same for server 1 as well. Now what this will allow us to do is we can do all the tasks on the objectives, and if we break the server we can always revert back to the snapshot, which you will have to do for some of the things. So you'll be configuring things like DNS, Samba, NFS, and after each one you can revert back to the base snapshot we just created and start again. Let's just boot both of the servers, make sure they're working, part of Kerberos, and the new network cards are also added. Let's start server 1 first. Now let's do server 2. So now you have 2 servers that are part of a Kerberos domain, and with these 2 servers you can carry out all the tasks on the objectives list for both RHCSA and RHCE. Let's log in to server 1. Let's check our network devices. Well, now we have 3, which is correct. Let's test our Kerberos. By switching to Kerberos user 1, that also works. Let's do the same on server 2. Check our network devices. Devices, no connection. We have 3 devices, and Kerberos user 1 also works. So that's it, both servers are ready. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. There are some contact details below. If you have any questions, suggestions, then yeah, just drop me a line.